Will Murphy coming to you from Mac Lighting in Los Angeles. I'm joined by my colleague, Kat Covell.
Hey, Will Murphy.
Another wonderful Tech Talks on grandMA 2 functionality. And be aware, you can type questions anytime. Yes, of course, it's titled Assign Menu because that's our kickoff topic, but we are here to answer any and all questions, or at least attempt to answer them. I think we've been stumped a couple times. So if you have questions during the webinar, go ahead and type those in. We'll get to them after the kickoff topic. You can, of course, ask about the related topic, assign menu questions, or anything else. Thank you for submitting some of your questions during the sign-up process. We have a few that are related to the assign menu, and we have a few that are different topics, which is great. So thanks for doing that. Let's get started. The wonderful grandMA 2 on PC software. I hope you guys are using it. It's the same software as in the desk, so it's all the same functionality. So the assign menu, this title bar here of your executor, if you tap on that or click on it, you can get to the assign menu. You also have this assign button. Some people prefer to use hard keys, and they will say assign and click on any of the three buttons associated with the executor, which also brings you to your assign menu. So assign, click on one of the buttons. So there's two ways. If you're using a touch screen, you can tap on the title bar. If you're an on PC wing user, it might be a little easier to use the hard key by hitting assign and then hitting one of the buttons associated with the executor. Don't confuse the assign menu, which is this gray title bar, or this green area, with the sequence editor. The sequence editor is accessed by tapping in the mini queue list here. So if I try this on an empty executor, nothing happens because there's no sequence assigned. If I try this on the sequence that has a queue list, a mini queue list, I tap or click, I get the sequence editor, or the sequence executor sheet. There's also a hard key access for this as well. So instead of assign, you're opening the editor, so you hit edit and click on any of the three buttons associated with the executor. Or not. Why does this not work? I think Kat can confirm this works on a real console. I imagine this is something with the on PC.
You switch windows over to your command screen.
Yeah, we could try this one. That's true. Yeah, there we go. Something with the on screen. Sorry. So if you have those real executors on a console or an on PC wing, you can tap edit, click on any of the three buttons, and you get that same queue list editor. Okay, so today's topic is about the assign menu. Probably a more often accessed feature associated with the assign menu is reassigning these buttons off, on, and go. Maybe those are not the buttons you want. So you click on the title bar, notice function options, okay? Options are all the executor options. Function is related to the function of that executor. Remember, executors are physical access to a digital world. So in this particular case, I've assigned a sequence there from the sequence pool so that I am able to play it back. I'm able to play back those cues. I'm able to interact with those cues, and I'm able to do things to those. I can off this queue list. I can hit go on that queue list to step through the cues. Maybe this on button. On is a assert function. It reasserts all the tracked values, or it just turns on the executor. Maybe I want this to be a go back. I would click on the button in the assign menu, take a look at this big list, and I would choose go back. And now this button is a go back button. So I can go forward, and I have the option to go back, and I can turn this off. Depending on the purpose of your executor, what it's doing, maybe you want a flash button instead. So now I can actually flash this executor. Since it's an actual queue list, maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Get my face out of the way. bring that to full, and we'd store this to one of the button executors down here. Right now, this is a go button, which just leaves those on at full. I probably might want that to be a flash button. So I would choose flash. Since it's already on, I need to turn it off. And now I can flash these lights. Now, you know, this flash is a 0 time. I know a lot of people ask about flashing with timing. That would be the temp button. So now as I hold this temp button, you notice it fades up over the queue time. So I go to sequence executor. I want this to be 1 second, which means now it fades up over 1 second and turns off in 0 time, because temp is turning on the executor and following the queue time, and release of temp actually turns off the executor, which I can access with this off time. I open the sequence executor sheet, I close it on my first encoder, I set that to 1 second, and now temp on, temp off, and turns off in 1 second. So this is where you can assign all these buttons. You can find lots of help and descriptions about this by clicking help and tapping on the blue title bar. Are the buttons explained in here?
In the bottom. Oh, there you go.
Function button?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a picture from a slightly older list from, say, 3.0. We're in 3.1. We added a few more buttons, but you can see the arrows, jumps, queues, fixes or unfixes the executor, go, this execute to go command, half speed, half rate, kill. This is the same as a go, but it turns off all other executors except those with kill protect, off par, so fix, etc. Remember, physical access to a digital world. If you want a quick button to do something, such as toggle, make it a toggle button. You can also define the width of your executor. So I have this one queue list, but now it's 3 executor slots wide. So now I have all kinds of buttons. I have flash, go, swap, learn, on, black, go back, pause, off. I have a speed fader. I have a crossfade fader, so I can manually crossfade. If you need more handles, change the width. It can go all the way up to 5. Assigning sequences, if you don't want to use the assign method by saying assign sequence 100 here, or delete that sequence assignment. The sequence 100 still exists. I can do this via the assign menu by going to sequence, saying I want sequence 100 here. Same way. Different ways to achieve the same purpose. I can assign group masters. If I want an inhibited group master, let's run my handy macro, which gives me all my cool stuff. Group 2, the alpha spot. So now I have an inhibited group master. Remember this assign menu, I talked about options. This is all kinds of options associated with sequences. If you have a group master and you go to option, you'll see, well, there's only 3 modes. There's 3 options related to mode on whether the group master adds intensity or removes intensity. So we want that to be empty. Same with special masters. We had a whole webinar on special masters. Did we post this one? Yes, maybe. Yeah, special masters are here. So if you go to our YouTube channel, Backlighting YouTube, go to the Tech Talks playlist, you can learn all about special masters by watching that video. You can assign effects, macros, timer objects. Cool. What happens when the timer object is here? Go. Now there's a timer running on your executor. I don't want that anymore. Go to empty. So really the most options that exist are related to sequences. Auto start, auto stop. This is pretty straightforward. Turns off, turns on. If you disable those, the fader has no control whether the executor is starting or stopping. So run this up and down. I can bring this up, go. Now I can fade this dimmer all the way out. I'm still in the queue, so I can run my fader up and down, or I can bring the intensity down. So that's auto start, auto stop. Auto stop off time means it's going to follow that off time. Remember how we set an off time earlier of, let's say, 5 seconds? Now when I bring this fader down, it just snaps regardless of the off time because I disabled that. Auto stop off time says, hey, turn off in the off time of the executor that you've set. Set that back to default. Auto fix fixes the executor so that when it's running, it's available. Notice I change pages, it goes away. If it's running and I change pages, it's still there, which is auto fixed until it turns off and then it goes away. So that keeps anything accessible while it's running. Master go, master on, master top. Basically, the master fader runs an on command or the master fader runs a go command. So master fader, every time I bring that fader up from 0, it's going to send a go command. Therefore, I'm going to disable auto stop so that I can bring my fader down and go up. Now I bring my fader down and I go up, it automatically triggers itself into the next queue. I bring my fader down, I push it up, it triggers it into the next queue. Master on is a great way to reassert all those tracked values. So you might bring a fader down. Its executor's still running. Other executors trigger. When you bring that fader up, you want to assert all those values. So I might do a master on. And then master top always brings it back to Q1. Loop breaking go. It kicks you out of a loop in your queue list. If you've set up a looping queue list, you can hit the go button to kick yourself out of it. Basically, kind of, what do we do? Store queue 1 through 10 here. Set these guys to follows. In this queue, I'm going to loop back to queue 3. And so now if we go on this guy, I've got this loop going. I can't get myself out of it. Loop break and go would allow me to hit go to kick myself out of it to the next queue. So it goes into 6. Now, I don't particularly use loop inside my queue list like that because we have chasers. You can always make a chaser and then just trigger it via syntax. But some people like loops inside their queue list, so that's a way to get out of that loop.
Hey, Will, how do I find that as a chaser since you just set it up?
I can just turn that queue list into a chaser. That's true. If you just wanted these 3, if you wanted a queue list to be a chaser, it's in the assign menu. It's this last option, chaser. Turn it on, and now it's in blue. And now this whole queue list is automatically a chaser. And let's double the speed. And now it goes really fast. So in this same menu, the assign menu, you have chaser over on the right. Make sense? Yeah. We'll leave that there. Priorities. We did a tech talk on priorities, right?
We did.
Is that online yet? No. Coming soon. Keep an eye on this tech talks, and hopefully, if you're not signed up for our notifications, remember aclighting.com/webinars brings you to the form. If you check this box and this box, you will receive notifications when we post new recorded videos to our YouTube channel related to GrandMA 2. If you've already filled this out, just type in the same email address and it'll allow you to update your settings and preferences. So priorities dictate priorities between executors. Makes it easy. We covered soft LTP too, so stay tuned for that tech talks to get posted. Playback Masters allows you to kind of set a grandmaster for a range of playbacks. So if you wanted both of these executors to kind of have a grandmaster per se, special master, Playback Master 1. You'll notice this is a full. When I bring this to 0, these lights over here on the left are going to go to 0. So I have a kind of a master fader control for these two executors. I can have as many executors as I want references. So group masters are for specific fixtures. Grandmaster on the command screen is for every fixture. Playback masters are master fader controlled for specific executors that you've assigned. Wraparound, you'll notice as I step through this queue list, it keeps going and going and going around in a circle. Turn that off, and it stays on Q5. So maybe theater queue list, you have one big queue list. You don't want that to wrap around. You don't want to accidentally go back to Q1 at the end of your show. Restart first queue, restart current queue, restart next queue. That's related to when you turn off your executor. So you've probably noticed by default, you turn off your executor, you hit go, it restarts with the first queue. I now set this to current queue. Benefit here is that, say I'm in Q3, I turn off my executor, I hit go, it restarts in Q3. If I'm using a fader with auto start and auto stop, I can bring this fader up and down, turns it off, turns it back on, stays in the current queue. Some people really want that to restart in the next queue. So I bring it down, I bring it up, it's Q4, I bring it down, I bring it up, it's Q5. When I turn it off and I hit go, it's Q1, I turn it off, I hit go, it's Q2. And the way you can see this, hopefully you guys are noticing this little mini queue list, it shows you what the next queue is going to be. So it gives you a little indicator that, oh, it's off right now. Oh, the next queue is going to be Q4. Whereas if I set this back to first queue, I turn this off, I see, oh, the next queue is Q1. Trigger is go. We turn this off, it's not a chaser anymore. Right here you have these follow queues. Okay, I'm trying to edit my queue list. Check it out. Oh, and now I get stuck in this loop. Well, it makes it kind of hard to double check that your queues are built correctly. So maybe you want to force all your triggers, whether they're timed or follows, time code, etc. Now every queue in my list is a go queue, regardless of the fact that Q4 and 5 are actually follow queues. And this is the reason that all these triggers show red, because triggers go is enabled. Command disable, that's for this command field that's in the queue list. So if we said go to Q1 executor 1.2, that syntax is going to run, which might be used to trigger my chaser. So when I hit go, there we go. Maybe I don't want this chaser to run. To disable all those commands, enable that, and now every time I go to Q2, no syntax is running anymore. My chaser stays off. It helps you focus on this queue list without triggering a whole bunch of other stuff. When you're ready to do the real show with all your command links again, turn that off, and now when I go to Q2, it runs my chaser. We're going to come back to these bottom two. AB crossfade versus split crossfade, it's dictating how the dimmers are reacting to each other. You crossfade. Kat, can you explain this one? Do you explain this one in class?
Not as well as you. How about that help manual?
I didn't. The relationship between the crossfade of this crossfade handle between dimmers and values. I'm trying to think of a quick example here. You have these lights at 100 and pointed down stage, stored here, and then you put them at 50 and point them upstage. Here, create second queue. Look, I've stumped myself. It's great. AB crossfade.
So AB is more to scene preset?
Yeah. Oh, bring my dimmer back. Dimmer position. So Q1 is 100. You see position and dimmer are crossfading at the same time. I think AB says, that's not right. I have not used this feature in so long, I forgot what it does. Too wide, I think it's maybe related to these guys, AB crossfade faders. Okay, we're in Q1. The B crossfader is only affecting dimmer. The A crossfader is affecting both. Go to split. The A fader is now doing the position. The B fader is doing dimmer. So hard to explain these, and I can't really show this very well because I don't have two fingers on this screen. So we bring this up, it's tilt. We bring this up, it's dimmer. Bring this down, it's both. Bring this down, and I got it. So up, A, down, both. And position, dimmer. It's a way to separate control of both values versus dimmer values. I apologize, I can't show this very well because I need two fingers to make sense of it, but if you use AB crossfade faders in your shows, you should see that one setting makes the fader A only control dimmer and B controls position. Another setting has them working in tandem. It's just dictating fade out first cue, fade in second cue, or fade into values of second cue, fade out values of first cue. Tracking.
We're going to do an entire webinar on tracking.
Yes. Here's how you turn off tracking. This is not a tracking cue list anymore. This is a tracking cue list. If you like non-tracking cue list, you could turn it off. Release first step. If you build a cue list like you do dimmer in the first cue and position in the second cue and color in the third cue and zoom in the fourth cue, and you want to maintain those position dimmer values to track around with wraparound, I would disable release first step. If I enable this, Q1 is always going to only be dimmer information. It's not going to add that position and color stuff that you added later. Q0 is related to tracking as well. We'll cover this in our tracking webinar, which is going to be in a few weeks, so stay tuned for invitation to that. And auto stomp is a way to automatically stomp effects that are running for values that exist in this cue list. So if I take these fixtures, I'll run a dimmer effect on them. Phase that, and we'll store that here. So I have a dimmer effect running. When I hit go on this executor, you'll notice the effect is still running. Well, I either have to stomp in the Q1, or I can just make this easier and enable auto stomp. So now the effect is running when I hit go. Because there's dimmer values in this cue list, it automatically stomps the effect that's running. That can be particularly helpful if you have a specific fader that always points on your downstage singer. You don't know when the guy's going to run out and talk, so you want to make sure you have some lights ready for him. I usually would create a fader that I can fade up that brings those lights to full, points them on him, and stomps any effects that might be running on those particular fixtures. Force position mode is if you're using XYZ. So I guess 95% of the users out there will program based on pan tilt. If you go from downstage right to downstage left with pan tilt, it's going to be this kind of arc. If you want it to go in a straight line, you can force XYZ. That means it's calculated based on X, Y, Z coordinates instead of pan tilt, and then the light fades from stage right to stage left in a straight line. You would have to enable X, Y, Z for the fixture. Speed settings, it's going to be related to, since I just built this executor with effects, we should see it's running at, say, 60 BPM. I should be able to multiply that by 8. And now it's not going to show you the value as being faster, but the executor tells the effect to run faster. So we could see it's gotten quite fast. I could assign a speed handle to this executor. Function, special master, speed 1. And I speed it up, slow it down, speed it up. So speed in an executor is going to affect the effects that are running. Rate, on the other hand, is going to affect the actual fade time between the cues. So if we look at a sequence executor sheet and we select this guy, it's not good. We'll select this guy. This is where I want to apply a rate. And I'm going to apply a rate master here. And if you guys have any questions about this stuff along the way, type it into the questions field. If there's something that kind of interests you, you'll notice that the fade time is changing. So the purpose of this is that if you have a really long fade at the end of your show, and the actors some nights are a little bit faster and the actors are some nights a little bit slower, now you as the lighting operator have a way to speed up your cue list while maintaining the look of everything. Therefore, your fade times that were 3 seconds now are, as you can see here, 2.8. It's faster, or everything's going slower. Let me slow that fade down. And you have an option here to link effect to rate. So because this is linked, the effects will start running faster as well. So everything about the look of that show, including the speed associated with effects, the cue fades go faster, the effects run faster. Sometimes you don't want the effects to speed up, but you do want the cues to speed up. So I would disable this link effect to rate. And steps rate means basically whole numbers. So in steps of, they're multiples of each other, right? So I don't think that really would work here because you don't really get variable, but the option exists. Okay, swap protect and kill protect. Remember I pointed the kill button and the swap button. I would certainly enable these if you have house lights on executors. You don't want the house lights accidentally flashing off or turning off in the middle of the show, so I would enable swap protect and kill protect. Ignore executor time. This is the executor time fader here. If you don't want your executors to respond to this override, enable ignore executor time. You'll notice by default the button executors are following the executor time. Executor time allows you to override the current fade time of the cues. So if this is on, and I disable this so that I am listening, notice I have no fades associated with my cues. And now if I bring this up to 15, my cues are going to take a long time. So if I turn this off and I hit go, it's back to normal time. So maybe you don't want that. You can say ignore. Off on overwritten, I definitely stumbled upon this many times in my examples. This effect is running. If I enable auto stomp, this cue list will take total control, and this turns off because off on overwritten. It says this executor is not controlling anything anymore, so I'm going to save resources and automatically turn off for you. If you don't want that to happen, you would disable off on overwritten. So now I turn this effect on, I can hit go all day. Auto stomp is still going to work, but that executor is going to keep running so that when I turn this off, I go back to what that executor was doing. And moving black never, that automatically pre-positions your cues for you. If you want all your cues to automatically move in black so you don't have to think about it, you'll see an exclamation Y. If you never want move in black, cue list, you'll see exclamation no. Personally, I do it on a cue by cue basis, which I have done here. This particular cue, I want that to mark early as possible. This particular other cues, I don't, so I don't use either of these settings. And auto pre-position is kind of a funny feature. It pre-positions the lights once you start the executor. It looks really weird in a normal cue list, but for single cue lists, it's very nice. Might say at 100 and point these down. Let's see how this works with the fader. So if I bring this up, my tilt values are fading over 3 seconds, and then my fader is controlling the dimmer. If I do auto pre-position, my pan tilt values are going to snap. So keep an eye on those pan tilt values. You see, as soon as I brought that fader on, they just snapped to full. Now, the nice thing is that the dimmer is at 0, so nobody really saw it, but everything's in position as soon as possible. Doesn't really work so well for moving lights because they take time to get there. However, I've noticed auto pre-position is very handy for media server functionality where you have XY coordinates, different content, etc. So, all right, big menu, remember, help, title bar, and I imagine we have a bunch of questions about this stuff, so let's see what we can get to.
All right. Yeah, we do have a bunch of questions that came in when you signed up, so let's get to a few of those. How do I copy a layout view to a stage view or the other way around?
There is no way to copy layout to stage view, but stage view to layout, of course, because if you use our Vectorworks plugin, which you would find on our support page, hopefully you use Vectorworks or you've imported, copy-pasted XYZ values, etc., it means that your stage view is already set up like this. Therefore, copying this to a layout view is easy. So I'm going to select my alpha spots and my alpha beams, and I have a layout view somewhere here. Yeah, okay. So we're going to store these fixtures to a new layout. Go to layout 3. They're all kind of in an order. Well, if you go to setup, and above your encoders, you have these options for positioning, etc. You have this nice arrange button. So you're going to go to arrange. And you get to arrange everything in a line or a circle or a rectangle or a camera. And I want to reference which camera? Well, if we look at the stage view, currently we're looking at the front. I could do the top view. I could do the left view if you want. I think the top view is probably the nicest. So let's get our encoder bar back. Camera, I want to reference the top view. I could see an example arrangement in yellow. I like that, so I apply. And then I hit zoom to fit, and we've got everything arranged. These particular fixtures, I might manually move them here and select all of those again, zoom to fit, and I'll use my encoders, element properties, to scale these up a little bit so they're bigger. And that's how you set up the stage view, set up the layout view from the stage view. Cool, next question.
What is the technical difference between escape, oops, and clear? When is it better to use one rather than the other?
Well, escape is the safest key on the desk. It closes windows and it kicks you out of edit mode. So if you're editing a preset, for example, you're in edit mode, you get out of it by hitting escape. If you've typed some stuff into the command line, you hit escape. Clear is interaction with your programmer, so it only has to do with programmer values. I've selected some lights, I hit clear to deselect it. I've selected some lights, everything's active, I hit clear once to deselect them. I hit clear again to deactivate the values. I hit clear again to clear my programmer. You should only be using clear to dictate changes to your programmer. Deselection, deactivation, and clearing your programmer out. Escape, remember, safest key on the desk. It closes pop-ups, so you don't have to hit the X key all the time. And then oops is undo. Oops is a backspace. Undo the last thing I typed, or when there's nothing in your command line, undo the last thing that I did, which was clear the values, and undo the active clear, and undo the selection clear. So they very much have distinct functionality. Next question.
Cool. I think this one is actually kind of sort of a two-parter. They want to make a macro to assign a button as off, but then also how can you just make a macro to off your executors without having to use that button?
You guys, for example, you could figure these out yourself just by looking at your command line. You want to know what the syntax is to off an executor. Okay. Watch your command line, and when I say off this, the last syntax was off executor 1.2. Well, that's your syntax in a macro. So, oops, if I find an empty macro here, off executor 1.2. So it does the same thing. So you can always learn syntax by doing it manually the way you know how to do it, and look at the command line, learn what the syntax should be. If you want to off all the pages, you could say off page 1. You can also say off page through. You could say off page 1 through 5. I could say off executor 1.1 through 1.5, which is executor 1 through 5 on page 1.
What is assigning that executor button as an off?
You want to change the executor button like these three? Yeah. So you can do this once again, learn from your command line. You said it out loud. You said the right syntax. Assign off here. You know, assign on here. Assign go back here. All right. So you want to assign a function to a button via syntax. I can say assign off exec button to 1.1 through 1.5. So that's executor 1 through 5 on page 1, and I'm assigning the off to executor button 2. And now all 5 of these change to off keys. So hopefully that clarifies how easy this is. Just do it, and then look in your command line. And when you get stumped, email support@aclighting.com.
There it is. All right, hey Will, what does that Autocreate menu do?
Autocreate is a way to make a bunch of presets from the calculator function sets. So if we look at these calculators, like these function set buttons, if you want these to be presets, which you should program from presets, not directly from the calculators, you would use the Autocreate menu. So Autocreate presets, well, I can Autocreate groups, which is actually how we built this groups pool, is from Autocreate. QWOs, I want a bunch of Gobo presets associated with what's in the calculators, and I'm going to add them as global from the channel sets. I call them function sets because there's terminologies that are the same. They're function sets. They're also called channel sets. So it created 48 presets. We go to Gobo here. We'll find they all got added here. Yeah, you're going to have to do a little rearranging, but it's a hell of a lot faster to rearrange than go through and store all this stuff. I don't remember if the help key works with this one. Help? Oh, yeah, it does. So you can see how to use the Autocreate menu for groups. You can go back, how to use it for presets.
And in preset references, we have a nice little support bulletin all about.
Yeah, on this support page, preset references is on here. So you can actually store presets into your fixture profile via preset reference. So if you make a bunch of cool presets for your fixture profiles, create the preset reference, stores it into the fixture profile. You store that fixture profile on your USB stick and then import it into your show. And we covered Autocreate a little bit in this first Tech Talks, I think.
I think we did.
So
I think we did as well.
Yeah. So take a look at that one. We covered Autocreate a little bit there too.
Cool. I feel like this question is going to pop up a lot for you, Will. I noticed you're using a Mac. What software are you using, and what would you recommend to run Windows on your Mac?
Boot Camp, hands down. I am using Parallels because I work in a software testing environment. This is not for show critical applications. So because I have, I don't know if you guys want to see, we have all kinds of crazy softwares, all the beta softwares. I have test softwares, etc. Sometimes I brick my Windows. I'm able to use Parallels to snapshot back to a clean state. For real shows, you should install Boot Camp, no questions. If you just want to play around and learn on PC, you're not doing any real show critical applications, sure, use Parallels. I'm in the midst of writing an article about this, so same place, sign up for webinars if you want to hear about tech bulletins related to Grammar 2. Those two things, you will get an email when this bulletin about using Parallels on your Mac or running on PC on your Mac gets posted, and how to optimize the settings. But Parallels by no means is intended for actual live show application.
Cool. Hey, Will, after MANet, what would you recommend using, Artnet or sACN, and why?
Definitely sACN all the way. Artnet is not a very great protocol. It just happened to be free, the first one, open source, easy to implement. There are three types of network communication: broadcast, multicast, and unicast. You can look those up. Multicast is the most efficient form of communication on a network. It doesn't overload your receivers, it doesn't overload your controllers, and you can actually manage the traffic as needed. Artnet is a broadcast protocol. It just floods the network. You can't really manage it. You either block it or allow it. So if you have to send 100 universes of Artnet, everybody has to listen to that. And these little processors in these fixtures, such as Ayrton, LEDs, etc., they get overrun. No questions. It doesn't matter that it's a gigabit adapter. It still has to look at all these packets, and the little processor gets killed. So I push people to use sACN. And from a management standpoint, yeah, managed switches are scary. The MA switch is not scary. The MA switch is one of the coolest new additions to the lighting industry because it's a totally user-friendly managed switch. We can actually help you from a support standpoint manage your protocols in about 5 minutes with a great UI. We will do another tech talks on the switch for sure, but I push for sACN. Also ask your manufacturers to implement sACN and specifically implement support for IGMP snooping. This could be a much longer conversation, but to fundamentally answer it, yes, sACN all the way.
All right. Let's ask one more quick one then. How about that?
Yeah.
How do I apply time on a preset?
Time on a preset? I don't understand. You want to store the time in a preset?
Sure. Yes.
To the preset object?
Mm-hmm.
So right now this yellow preset only has values. It has no fade or delay. So if I want to permanently apply a fade time to in this preset, I go to the fade layer and I say 5 seconds. And I store this here. Oh, I didn't mean to do selective. We'll store this here as universal, merge, and you notice it's now got yellow and green. Yellow means value, green means time. And when I click that, I now get the orange value plus the individual time of 5 seconds. However, the queues do not reference this. These are merely shortcuts. The queues only reference the value of a preset. So you can store this to a queue. The queue now gets a independent time of 5 seconds for the RGB values, but if you change that in the preset to 10 seconds, it won't update the queue. That's just a wish on the list. I also can't remember. I think if we deactivate the color values, I think, yeah, so just the 5 seconds is active. I could store that to a preset, and now I can call up red in my value layer and then hit 5 seconds. So I've seen people create kind of like quick presets for their individual time, which act as shortcuts. That's not the pool I wanted to open. This one. They'll do what I just did and create presets 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, all the way through 10 seconds. That's kind of majority what you're doing, and then you just have quick preset buttons to apply individual timing to the particular values. I think they're a really neat trick, actually. I guess this will be the last thing I'll show you, and then we're out of here for the day. If I say fixture through, fade, delay, we'll do delay. Link all values and say 5 seconds. I will store this to an all preset. Cool. And now when I select these fixtures, I can choose red. I can hit this. Oh, kind of scary. It applies it to everything. This is where you take advantage of your filter pool. So now I build a filter just for color. And if I follow the same example, we'll do this. Red filter only color, apply the values. So now my individual values, I created one set of presets for 5 second, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 second individual timing. Then I create a bunch of filters for my individual preset types. So I'd have gobo and then position. So now, position, gobo, color, I have a very quick way of saying, hey, apply 5 seconds to position. So I say position, 5 seconds, color, 5 seconds. Such a cool trick.
That was cool.
Cool trick. All right. If we didn't get to your question, email support@aclighting.com. We will not be doing any tech talks next week. We will be back the week after. So stay tuned for the sign-up emails. It's been a pleasure.
See you in a couple weeks, Will.
Happy programming.